Frank Gaffney joins me now, the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. And Frank, before we go any further, so I don't forget later, Merry Christmas to you and yours and everybody at the Center for Security Policy. Thanks for taking the time tonight.
Happy to do it, Lars, and same to you and yours as well.
Hey, let's talk about what happened in the president's statement of a new national security strategy. And apparently, he's got more than a few people unhappy, including the Chinese, which, I don't know, for some strange reason tells me he's actually doing the job that he was elected by the American people to do if the Chinese aren't all that happy with the message, because he says he's going to put America first in his national security, which I thought that was a well-duh for American presidents, isn't it? Of course you should put us first.
It should be a job requirement, actually, but it's not always been considered to be even something you say in polite company if you're president of the United States, let alone make the foundation of your policies. And Lars, you put it so well. I mean, it's the job he was elected to do. And the thing that I've been most struck by in looking at the national security strategy that was unveiled yesterday is it bears I call it an uncanny resemblance to his campaign platform. And what's so impressive about that is it suggests he actually means to deliver on what he promised us. Again, something that's a breathtaking departure from a lot of his predecessors, much as, by the way, was his decision to actually move the embassy of the United States to the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. But here's the thing. The president has sort of now got bookends. He campaigned on a platform of peace through strength. He campaigned to restore America's greatness and leadership with the founding principles underpinning that leadership. At the beginning with his campaign promises and now with this national security strategy, the trouble is that in the intervening year, much of that has not been put into practice. And I really put a lot of the blame on the fact that he has had what I think are best described as insubordinate subordinates.
You're talking about H.R. McMaster, aren't you? It's H.R. McMaster.
Specifically talking about H.R. McMaster.
Yeah.
But he's not alone. He just happens to be, I think, the architect of much of the subversion, really, of the president's policies that's taken place over the past year. Now, to his credit, he presided over the drafting of this policy approach and strategy. I just don't think, based on past experience, that he should be entrusted with its execution because he didn't do such a good job on executing on the president's campaign promise.
Well, Frank, let me ask you a question about this, and then I want to move on to Atlanta and what happened there. But why does Donald Trump put up with this? This is not a guy known for his tolerance for insubordination by anybody, and that's whether you just believe the stuff from The Apprentice and the TV show, or look at his time in office as president. He's a guy who doesn't take much, BS from the people who are working for him. Why is he taking it from McMaster?
Well, I'm sorry to say that this isn't a reality show. This is just plain reality.
Yeah.
And I think he has taken a lot of BS from people. And partly, in fairness to him, I think that's because he's got people around him who are insisting that he focus first and foremost on creating an image of stability. And that requires not replacing people, no matter how insubordinate they've been to you. I think the way to think about this, Lars, is that an aircraft in a nosedive has a certain stability.
Yeah.
It just doesn't end well.
I hear you loud and clear.
Time to move on.
Speaking of aircraft, let me give you my take on Atlanta. So Atlanta's airport, the busiest airport on planet Earth, bar none, Hartsfield International Airport, loses its power supply and simultaneously apparently loses its backup power supply. And what does this tell us about how we are prepared or not prepared in our grid for bad things to happen? This was an accident, as far as we know. If we were to attack deliberately, we could expect that the attack might have been, a little better planned out and maybe a little more thoroughly effective than this was, because this was just a mishap. So what does this tell us when we see the biggest airport in the world go down for many, many hours and inconvenience tens of thousands of people?
Yeah, look, it's risky to extrapolate too much from this specific circumstance, but just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a couple of thousand people, 10,000 or more. It was millions of people across the country who were actually impacted by Atlanta basically being shut down and all of the flights across the country
That's
that
true.
were affected as a result.
I understated it.
Here's your point. Here's your point. There were two different systems, apparently, that were supposed to provide power, the main power source and the backup. But they apparently shared in common a switch that when it caught fire, incapacitated both of them. Now, what that says to me, Lars, which I think you can actually extrapolate to the larger situation we face with our electric grid, is that resiliency has not been baked in to the design and the character of the infrastructure that we rely upon for everything. And what these people experienced in those 10 grueling hours of darkness and being locked in, tunnels or in doors, in some cases, revolving doors, no food, no water, is just a microcosm, of course, of what people in Puerto Rico have been experiencing a lot of late, and what all of us could experience if somebody does deliberately and comprehensively take down our electric grid. But the main thing is, if we don't get about the business right quick of making sure that the grid is resilient, and by the way, it's something the president did talk about in his new national security strategy. He did talk about the threat, including of electromagnetic attack, as well as cyber and physical sabotage. So they are now focused on this, I think properly so, but they have to implement it by protecting the grid, actually securing it. And it's high time we do it. There's a great deal of information at securethegrid.com if people are interested in learning more.
Frank, thanks so much for the report, and we appreciate the time tonight. Merry Christmas to you and everybody at the Center for Security Policy.
Back at you, my friend. Thank you.
Very much appreciate you coming on the program.